Hello and welcome. I'm Robert Neild. This is my channel, Many Mysteries, One Secret Solution. Please see the trailer for an overview of the entire video series, which will eventually cover more than 60 individual topics. This video, the second in the series, identifies the probable location of missing flight MH370. Thank you for watching. Missing Malaysian flight MH370. Malaysian Airlines flight MH370, a Boeing 777-200ER, disappeared 8 years ago during a routine overnight flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. It is now established that the aircraft's wreckage lies somewhere at the bottom of the Indian Ocean. In this thesis, I argue that the disappearance of the aircraft was carefully planned, in part as a deliberate attempt to create a famous aviation mystery that would go down in the annals of history. In that respect, it has so far achieved the objective. Unsurprisingly, in view of the size and remoteness of the crash zone, physical searches have so far failed to locate the wreckage. However, by adopting a fresh approach employing logic, rational assumptions, and established facts, a precise location is identified as the aircraft's probable resting place in an area not yet researched. Key to the method is an attempt to second-guess the plan of the aircraft's captain, who was almost certainly responsible for the plane's disappearance. Flight MH370, registered as 9M Emro, disappeared from radar while flying from Kuala Lumpur International Airport to Beijing Capital International Airport in the early hours of March 8, 2014. The flight should have taken about 6 hours. On board were 227 passengers from 15 nations and 12 Malaysian crew. The plane was piloted by 53-year-old Captain Zahari Ahmed Shah from Penang, who had been employed by Malaysian Airlines for 30 years. A family man, Shah was one of the airline's most experienced pilots with more than 18,000 hours. He was also a pilot instructor and had published technical articles about the 777 on the internet. The co-pilot, First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, was 27 years old with 2,700 hours flying experience. He was due to be married soon. The aircraft itself had logged over 53,000 hours and had made more than 7,000 takeoffs and landings without incident. The pilot of MH370, Captain Zahari Shah. MH370 timeline. The flight departed Kuala Lumpur International Airport at 0:41 MYT. Last voice contact with KL Air Traffic Control was at 01:19 MYT. There was no report of any problem from the flight deck. The weather was good, it was a moonless night, and everything appeared normal until 01:22 MYT, when MH370 disappeared from air traffic control radar. The aircraft then failed to make contact with Vietnamese air traffic control some minutes later. An hour later, at 02:22 MYT, MH370 made its last known appearance on Malaysian military radar over the Andaman Sea, 230 miles northwest of Penang. The aircraft was hundreds of miles off course, heading in a west-northwest direction. Inmarsat satellite data analysis indicates that the aircraft later made a sharp left turn, flying south until at least 08:19 MYT, 6 hours after last appearing on military radar, when the fuel was exhausted and power outage resulted. Immediately the RAT system activated, causing a final partial handshake with the satellite as the aircraft systems rebooted. The RAT would provide sufficient electrical power to fly the plane as a glider, allowing it to ditch under human control a few minutes later. Total flight time about 7 hours 45 minutes. Reasons to suspect MH370 did not disappear as the result of an accident. 1. The initial event at 1:22 MYT, disabling the aircraft's transponder and ACARS, together with a sudden change of direction, occurred within seconds of entering the radar void between Malaysia and Vietnam. A simultaneous combination of circumstances very unlikely to happen by chance, especially as there is no legitimate reason why the transponder and ACARS would ever be deactivated in flight. That was the first step in the plane's disappearance, and a way of buying time before anyone realised MH370 was missing. 2. The plane changed direction at least 4 times after the initial event at 1:22 MYT. Each alteration required human intervention, and all taking place in a period of about 1 hour. This rules out hypoxia on the flight deck. If the pilot and co-pilot had been overcome by either toxic fumes or hypoxia, MH370 would have either continued on a steady flight path or fallen out of the sky. It could not have changed course several times in 1 hour by itself. 3. The flight path took MH370 in and out of the border between Malaysia and Thailand. This could not have happened without human intervention, as it required expert knowledge of the radar in that area. 4. No attempt was made to land MH370 in Vietnam or Malaysia, nor was there any attempt to ditch the plane in the Straits of Malacca. 5. There was no distress call, even though there had been plenty of time to issue one by 2:22 MYT, and before the final turn south, when the aircraft must still have been under human control. 6. The aircraft appears to have been flown through and out of Malaysian airspace in such a way as to avoid both civil radar and sighting by other aircraft. To do so required knowledge and skill far beyond that of an ordinary hijacker. 7. There were no claims of responsibility from terrorist organisations. There was no demand for ransom, nor any attempt to fly the plane into buildings. 8. Attempts to contact the plane by phone were received but not acknowledged. 9. MH370 was still flying at 08:19 MYT, nearly 7 hours after the initial loss of contact. A very prolonged period indeed, and virtually impossible if there was a critical fault with the aircraft. 10. The remoteness of the crash zone suggests planning and with malicious intent. If the aircraft's disappearance was planned in detail, MH370's final resting place is probably a special location, chosen to make the aircraft's discovery as difficult as possible, chosen in order to create a long-lasting, almost insoluble mystery. The discovery of parts from MH370 washed up along the east coast of Africa means it is certain the aircraft came down somewhere in the Indian Ocean. The fact that relatively fragile wing parts were found intact and therefore watertight, even after travelling thousands of miles across the ocean, suggests the aircraft did not undergo a very high-speed catastrophic impact. The trailing edge of a flaperon from MH370, Figure 1, shows signs of abrasion, perhaps caused by friction due to contact with seawater as the aircraft ditched at about 140 miles per hour. Hypothesis: MH370 was hijacked by a suicidal pilot. It was always highly suspicious that a modern aircraft like a Boeing 777 with an excellent safety record could suddenly vanish by accident. Transponder and ACARS deactivation, failure to initiate a distress signal, no attempt to land or ditch the aircraft, lack of response when contacted by phone, and at least 4 course changes. Those facts are consistent with the actions of a pilot who is deliberately trying to make his plane disappear. In other words, a pilot hijacking his own aircraft. So, by far the most likely culprit was Zahari Shah, partly because he had the knowledge and skill to make the aircraft disappear from radar, partly because the FBI found that he had practiced flying a plane into the southern Indian Ocean on a homemade flight simulator, partly because he appears to have been an obsessive, and partly because his diary was void after March 8, 2014. Shah seems to have had fanatical interests in aviation, religion and politics, a combination of obsessions which might have caused serious problems if things went wrong in his personal life. Whatever the psychological undercurrent, it seems that Shah gave vent to his anger and frustration by hijacking the aircraft, killing himself and all the occupants, and burying the aircraft in the most inaccessible location imaginable at the limit of the aircraft's range. It appears that the disappearance of MH370 was a malicious attempt to cause as much trouble as possible and create a famous mystery. Regarded as highly intelligent by those who knew him well, Shah had an unblemished 30-year service record and was described by colleagues as meticulous. In other words, he was a perfectionist. It is therefore very likely that, being such, he left nothing to chance and made detailed calculations for the flight path, flight time and, crucially, the latitude and longitude of the final destination. If so, MH370 probably entered the sea not at a random location, but a specially chosen position. Where did Shah choose as the final destination? What was special about it? How did he find it? One patch of sea looks much like another. Therefore, the only distinguishing feature that the location could have is a special latitude and longitude. Having simulated flights into the southern Indian Ocean, Shah might have noticed a set of unique features associated with the precise location 90 degrees east, 30 degrees south, a position that lies very close to the flight path estimated first by the American NTSB. Figure 5, yellow line. Trial and error experimentation using Google Earth reveals several unique features of the precise location 90 east, 30 south. 1. 90 east, 30 south is the intersection of important lines of longitude and latitude, and so it could be argued the crossing point X marks the spot. 2. The flight path from the runway at Kia to 90 east, 30 south can be adjusted to a precise length of 3814 statute miles, equivalent to the date in American notation, month first, when the plane disappeared. 3814 is March 8, 14. 3. The flight time was about 7 hours 45 minutes, close to 7.77 hours. So in decimal notation, the flight time is the aircraft type, a Boeing 777. Flight path and flight time give an average airspeed close to 500 miles per hour, which is about right. 4. Remarkably, the point 90 east 30 south lies exactly along the arc of the Great Circle passing through the runways at Kuala Lumpur and Beijing. 5. 90 east 30 south is just beyond the extreme western limit of Australia's Radar 2 zone, see figure 2. Indeed, the flight path is nearly tangent to the arc of Radar 2 at that location. 6. At the exact position 90 degrees 0 minutes 0 seconds east, 30 degrees 0 minutes 0 seconds south, the minutes and seconds are all zero, and so time could be said to have run out or stopped, corresponding with journey's end, the flight terminus. 7. The location is exact. In general, if any location is spot on, it can be said to be dead on, implying perhaps that everyone is dead there. No other place within range of MH370 is associated with so many special coincidences. In that regard, 90 east, 30 south is unique. The key to the hypothesis here is that if I could spot the unique set of coincidences associated with 90 east, 30 south, so too could an expert like Shah. For the plan to succeed, it was vital that the aircraft either evade or confuse radar, a requirement significantly constraining the flight path. Figure 2 shows the area covered by Australia's experimental over-the-horizon radars. Radar 2 extends up to about 1,500 miles from the west coast of Australia. As a very experienced aviator in that part of the world, Shah would almost certainly have known of Radar 2. He wanted to be certain of evading detection. Therefore, the flight path of MH370 had to lie entirely outside the area covered by Radar 2. The location 90 east 30 south lies just beyond the radar's western limit, so even with Radar 2 operational, the aircraft could not have been detected. The need to avoid Radar 2 explains why the aircraft flew a long way west before turning sharply south to follow longitude 90 east, a path corresponding with the left edge of Figure 2. The point 90 east 30 south is just west of the start of Radar 2's external arc. Limitations imposed on the maximum flight time and the range by the aircraft's known fuel reserve imply a probable final location along a narrow north-south strip, an area within which 90 east 30 south lies. The red line in this figure is one of Shah's trial runs, found by the FBI on his homemade flight simulator. The flight suddenly turns very sharply southeast, precisely at longitude 90 east, and continues far into the southern Indian Ocean. So this shows that 90 east, that longitude, was in Shah's mind when he was planning this. It makes logical sense that if Shah, a perfectionist, chose a precise special longitude, i.e. 90 east, he probably chose a precise special latitude for the coordinates of the flight terminus. Of the special angles in trigonometry, the basis of navigation, 30, 45, 60, 90, only latitude 30 degrees was within reach of the aircraft. When the incident began at 1:22 MYT, many, if not most, on board MH370 would have been asleep. It's likely that the passengers and crew were killed by hypoxia due to decompression of the cabin soon after the aircraft changed course. Consequently, there would be no attempt to break down the flight deck door during the rest of the flight, and no attempt to use mobile phones or satellite phones. The plane was incommunicado with the rest of the world. Shah knew that the ping range of the black box flight recorder is very limited, and that the battery lifetime is no more than about 1 month. By sinking the aircraft in very deep water in a very remote location, there was virtually no chance MH370 would be found by detecting its flight recorder pings. That too suggests deliberate, malicious planning. Clearly, Shah had made a physical search for the aircraft extremely difficult, and so we have to find the plane by other means. Drift analysis of replica wing parts from MH370 indicates that the main search area based on Inmarsat data, the so-called 7th arc, was wrong. If the aircraft had crashed near the 7th arc, debris would have washed up on the west coast of Australia. In fact, nothing has definitely been found there. However, at least 35 pieces of MH370 have been found on the East African coast and nearby islands, the other side of the Indian Ocean. The main problems with the satellite data were that only 7 data points were available, and the data was probably subject to unknown systematic errors. Drift analysis suggests that for the debris to have washed up where it did, the crash site was further west and north of the 7th arc, in an area containing 90 east, 30 south. That is the point in the green shaded area where the major lines of latitude and longitude cross. So what might have caused the systematic errors? One possibility is that once daylight hours came, Shah decided to hide the plane under cloud cover so that it couldn't be seen by satellites, because of course he would have known that satellites can take photographs of that part of the world and might show up the plane. So as an extra precaution, he may have reduced the flight altitude well below 35,000 feet to maybe just 10,000 feet, so he's at the same height or below the level of the cloud layer, so the clouds act as a camouflage for the plane. But if that was the case, the plane would then be travelling much slower than its normal cruise speed of 570 miles an hour, and may have been travelling at as little as, say, 400 miles an hour. What that then does is, it means the plane didn't travel as far as people think south by 0819 MYT. In other words, the seventh arc would be further north than the position we see in the diagram, and could have been further north by a few hundred miles, in which case it would be much nearer to the point 9030 than we see here. And that would then be explanation for why there's a sort of discrepancy here. Shah would probably have realised that the way a satellite would detect the presence of an aircraft would not be by seeing the aircraft itself, but by detecting its condensation trails. Condensation trails only start to appear from aircraft flying at 25,000 feet and above. So this would be a good reason why Shah would reduce the altitude of the aircraft once daylight started to appear below about 20,000 feet or so, to guarantee that the satellites couldn't detect any condensation trail. In conclusion, nobody can claim for a fact that they have solved the mystery of missing flight MH370. Clearly, if the aircraft entered the sea at a random location, the mystery is almost certainly insoluble. But if the crash site was planned in advance, it almost certainly had a special significance, and that means there is a reasonable chance of finding the aircraft. The evidence shows it is highly likely that the answer to the mystery lies in the actions and plans of Captain Zahari Shah, plans which, precisely because he was a logical and clever perfectionist, can probably be second-guessed. In other words, it seems that Shah set the world a challenge, a test, a seemingly insoluble mystery, but a mystery that nevertheless can be solved. Postscript. A colleague said that she could not believe that Shah was a mass murderer because he was always such a jovial character, always cracking jokes, and how could a joker be a killer? If Shah was indeed a witty comic, it's very likely he would have spotted the macabre joke I pointed out previously, that the final resting place of MH370 is dead on 90 east, 30 south. It could be argued that there is cruelty in comedy, since jokes often make fun at another's expense. We laugh at another's misfortune. In that sense, Shah's ultimate joke was that he succeeded in making fools of us all. That's the end of the video. The next one in the series will be dealing with the mystery of Alzheimer's disease. So please look out for that one, and thanks for watching this video.